appreciate everybody coming out today. Today is, I guess, our last lecture of the year. The Historical Society and Foxfire and the library have come together to bring some lectures to the citizens, hoping that the topics have been interesting. Today we've got with us Cary Thomas, who is a 30-year veteran of the Rabun County Sheriff's Department. He worked his way up to Chief Deputy and Investigator. He was involved in the breaking up of 170 moonshine stills in our area and headed training classes in moonshine production for ATF agents, GBI agents, and other law enforcement personnel throughout Georgia and the United States. And so, Cary, thank you for being here today.
I look at it as a good opportunity basically to come forth with any information or anything like that. It may be helpful sometime in the future. And you'll see what I'm talking about when we go into it. But the first thing I'd like to show you here, a benefit of the whiskey makers is making a hand sanitizer. And this one here may have been made locally at one of our distilleries back when we were having a problem and everything with the virus. So, and again, this is basically, but you can't drink it. It's a different alcohol, okay? So, but I'm going to show you most of the stuff right here. We're going to kind of go over, and then I'll quit boring you, and we'll go through the program. But the my little display I have right here is basically an exact example of an old liquor still that you might find back in the woods. We call this particular distillery here a bale still because of the shape of it. But anyway, this is what we call government liquor, and it's brown. This is what we call moonshine, and it's clear. All right. So, but how did the one thing I want to show you? How did the moonshiners come up with brown liquor?
Char.
Well, they had two or three. If you didn't have a keg that was burned or fired, you went to the drugstore and you bought little sticks of charcoal. They were called charcoal sticks. You filled the jug up with those things, and with a small period of time, you had brown liquor. Now, a lot of times it mellowed it out to where it tasted a little bit better maybe for you. But another little secret you could do, put it in the refrigerator and let it leave it there for 24 hours or something. It seems to take out some of that bitterness and stuff with it. The product itself that we're going to be using, we ain't going to be using it, but what they used was corn. Corn had to be ground up into meal, yeast, and the oatmeal or anything like that, which was you didn't use oatmeal basically for the liquor, but you used the cornmeal, and then you used. Let me ask, I got an expert right here, Bobby Lettrell, on whiskey making. Her family was notorious in it. Did you ever use hog shorts?
Yes.
All right. You know what hog shorts are?
No.
Hog shorts is hog feed, and it's ground up corn, stalk, everything that you can get on from the corn.
Even the
And
cobs.
it's huh?
It even had the cobs in it.
Even the cob, yeah, everything. You just grind it up. All right, you feed it to your hogs, but you can make some dang good liquor out of it. But to make the liquor to take more tasteful, you add barley or some other grain or something like that in it to give it a little bit of a kick. And then if you depends on what proof you want. Most of this right here is something I'm going to show you. I bought this right here in Gatlinburg, and it says on it that it's 100 proof, but it's not. I tested it with this, and it's 120 proof. I don't know how they get away with doing that, but anyway, obviously they're not testing it. But the thing that these whiskey makers do when the whiskey came out from what's called the worm, it may be 150, 140, something like that. You want to temper it down. And the way you temper it down is to add water to it. And what it does, it gives you more whiskey. So, and then there's certain ethnic groups in this country that didn't like real strong. They like it to be around 50. So what they do if you had and that was good because if you had a gallon of moonshine, you could take it. If you sold it to somebody, they would take it and put half and half water and half air. And they got it down, they tempered it down to 50 proof. And then they sold it by shots. So you could take a gallon, and then you had 2 gallons, and then if you sold it for $2 a shot, you make a fortune on the thing. But anyway, we're gonna let Matt go ahead. This is Matt, my son, with the police department, and he's done a lot of different programs, and he's the technician here, because I'm stupid when it comes to computers or anything like that. So I'm gonna turn it over to him and let him go. If there's any questions or anything like that in between the two sessions, we'll let anybody ask any question that you have, and hopefully I may know the answer to it.
It's like a little cartoon there.
Yeah, we throw that in there basically just to show that this is a nationwide, well, I don't want to say problem, but anyway, if you'll read that, our sheriff is Don Page. Randall was our expert in whiskey making. Randall had gotten caught, and Randall had a pardon from President Bush when he was giving pardons and stuff out. He also helped us in all the schools that we did, because basically he is an expert in that, because he's been, not only made it, he got caught at it. That right there is a still that was, and it's probably, if it says there on the 1920s, that was a picture that came from the Historical Society. Now, we pulled some of the stuff from there and from other sources. But this right here is a typical still. I don't know if you can see up here on the left-hand side in the corner. Oh, and you know why there's a fence around it? That's to keep the revenuers out. And the pigs. You had wild hogs that was out there, and they'd have to build that because they would get in there and bears, and they would get turn the mash over and eat. They wanted a good Saturday night out too. So, but if you'll see that particular still here is similar to this one here. This is a 1920s deal. And this one right here is a 1980, around 1985 deal. So you can see the similarity. They still do the same thing, but there's several different type stills that was used in Rabun County, and we're going to go through that, and as we do, I'll try to explain some of that. All right, now this is a sorghum meal. Back during the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, there was rationing, and you couldn't get sugar. So what people did is they took sorghum, and sold it, and I'm going to tell you one thing here as far as I want. I'll try not to talk too much about politics or religion, but I can't keep it out of it, because it was all really a part of it. And one thing that I had a preacher tell me when we were talking about this thing on it, preachers never did preach against whiskey making. They preached against whiskey drinking. Whiskey making brought in money to the church, okay? And it's a sin to drink whiskey and stuff, but it ain't to make it, So anyway, and a lot of people use your justification of, well, it didn't stay in this county, it went somewhere else. So anyway, but that's typically farmers here was making money on different ways, and this was in fact, you go on Highway 76 off on the left-hand side out there at the old Parker's Ranch. There was a sorghum mill out there, and they made their money back during that time period, selling the sorghum that they made. And the story that was told that people would come in with a tow sack. Y'all know what a tow sack is? Okay, I'll say a pillowcase. Came in with a pillowcase, and it would be full of $1 bills. Now this was back during the Depression times. Well, they used to call them Hoover days. I don't know if y'all have ever heard that expression. Anyhow, they would come in, they'd count out, sit there at the table and count out the $1 bill. And the guy telling me about that said it was the greatest thing in the world to see a $5 bill in there. That's something you didn't see a lot of. So, anyway.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay.
Now we had a lot of famous law enforcement people here in this county all the way through the years, and a lot of people don't realize, if you go back and look and you do a little bit of research, the sheriff didn't serve for 4 years, back in the old days. They was just 2 years, so every 2 years somebody else got elected sheriff. And the sheriff really didn't make that much money unless he served warrants. An arrest, he made so much money on each arrest. And if he had a jail and he kept people in there, he got a little bit of money for that. Usually he had his wife in there doing the cooking and the cleaning and stuff like that, because same way we have to do now, you husband and wife both have to work to go make a living at it. So this is the type of steels and things that you might see. Again, that's a typical poor man's steel right there that you're looking at. Again, you see the fence around it to keep the revenuers and the hogs out. That one right there appears to be a steamer, and that's where you use steam to run through. And steam was real good because of the fact that the steam didn't burn your liquor as bad as what using, say, if you're using coke or coal or propane or wood or something like that. That's another bale type steel, or the pot right there on the right hand side. And if you look up here on the top part, this up here, that's called a preheater. That's this part right here. That's to speed up everything that as the steam is running through all your copper stuff, it's actually heating up your next run that you're going to be making, the next batch. So all you had to do is just take it out of that and put it into to your steel, and you're ready to go with it. It's just cut down on the time. It's funny how people do. Your outlaws, sometimes what they'll do, but they're hoping it stays in the family. When you get somebody that comes around with a camera, you want a picture to be able to show, to prove that what you would do. But look how well dressed these people are. That's working clothes. I'm going to tell you something right quick on this right here. I had somebody tell me whenever we called him, and he was asking me, why are y'all doing this out here? Man's out here trying to make a living and stuff. So and I said, well, the biggest thing, the problem you got right here, you ain't paying no taxes on it. Yes, I am. I'm paying taxes on this liquor I'm making. I got to pay taxes on the jars when I go buy them. I got to pay taxes on my yeast. I'm going to have to pay taxes on everything that goes in for production. I got to pay taxes on the gas and stuff for me going back and forth to the liquor store and stuff, or do whatever I'm doing. I'm paying taxes on it. I'm paying more tax on this than what the fellow legally is paying on his. So there was an argument and everything that we did have within this thing. And that's what brought that particular thing up was the jars. It wasn't kind of like you go Coca-Cola bottles. I don't know if y'all remember, when I was a kid, we used to collect Coca-Cola bottles because you could turn them in and get 2 cents on them. I don't know what they are now, but I don't think they'll even take them back. But in the old days, you could get 2 cents on it, and then a Coke didn't cost but a nickel back then. And they didn't have too much recession business or anything. But there's a younger me pouring out a bunch of whiskey that we had got. That was basically the first still that I got involved with in 1982. And that was one of the biggest stills that I'd ever seen here in Rabun County. It was a huge box of metal that they fired on the bottom of it. And it held, I'm just trying to guess on the thing, it probably held about 2,000 gallons of mash. That's a lot of mash and stuff. So, and it was located off on, down on Highway 76 down towards the South Carolina Bridge. What got it caught was the fellow was coming across the bridge and he almost run into a revenuer that was coming from South Carolina over here. He switched around, pulled him over, found him with like 12 cases or something like that of whiskey in the back of his car. So anyway, this guy, to help himself out just a little bit, because he's going to lose his freedom, he's going to lose his car, going to lose his whiskey. So he went ahead and told them where the steel was at, and they gave him a little bit of a break on it. We poured out, it got to the point that where you can't do that now either. See, that's an environmental issue here. When you start pouring out whiskey, and especially when you got, maybe 1,000 jugs of it out there. Just imagine what that's going to smell like. So, but again, it falls back to this thing of how how much liquor actually was made in this county. And you can go anywhere in the state of Georgia, and if people don't have any knowledge whatsoever, they're going to tell you Rabun County, Habersham County, Towns County. That's where the liquor in Georgia came from. Okay, and most of it came from Rabun County. that was a steamer. You can't tell too much about it, other than the fact that you could see the insulation that they had to put around the pipes and things like that to keep the heat and stuff within the pipes and stuff. Again, that's a part of it. The same steel. That's a typical steel, similar to what we have right here, as far as the a bale type steel. And then what I'm gonna do is give right quick is just tell you that one is coming out of it into this barrel. You see it come out here into that barrel. You know what that barrel is called? It's called a puke barrel. And the reason they call it that is because when that steam is sitting there bubble, bubble, bubble like that, sometimes it overflows into it, and you don't want it to do that and come back down into be in the pipes and stuff, pick up the nastiness. Because it's going to soil that and make it a different color. So that's a puke barrel. If it boils over into it, it comes back. From that, this one here is running into it's got two thump barrels right there. You got a dry thumper and you got a wet thumper. And it gets its name, thumper, basically from the sound, is when that steam is coming down and hits that cold mash that happens to be left in there, or whiskey that's into it, it goes doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. So they call that thump barrel. And the other one is dry. And the only purpose of that is to pick up impurities that's running through the steam into your barrels right there. The other is what I showed you before up here. This is your preheater. That's heating up the next batch that's going to go into it. Your condenser, you can't see a condenser on this particular one right here, but on the one I've got, you got a condenser right there in the little barrel, and it's well, I don't know if you'll get to see it. I don't know if we got that or not. Go ahead, Matt. This is what we got. Now, what you put on here is this is a money maker, right? What you do in this particular steels right here, they're about 3.5 feet tall, 4 feet wide, 8 foot long. And they will produce a lot of whiskey. Now, you don't see any copper or anything like that in that, except for maybe a headache piece that comes out and is connected into your condenser. Those right there is like, it's about 1,500 gallons per run is what, that ain't right. You're not gonna make that much. That's about what they're gonna hold. It's about sometimes 750, something like that, with the amount you're gonna have into it. When you run something that size right there, say you got a steel that holds 50 gallons, you're only gonna make something like 12 gallons of good whiskey out of that. The rest of it's gonna be the water or the mash itself. So, this particular thing, if you look at the cap, there's a significance in that cap right there. That thing keeps showing up in all these different steels that we blow up. Now, I'm just kind of like, getting rid of the surprise on it. But again, that little jar right there was some of the whiskey that was left over that came back out in that bucket that you'll see right here. Again, we had any kind of whiskey or anything like that was evidence. We had to send to the crime lab in Atlanta, the federal crime lab. They would test it, tell us what everything's in it. It's got lead in it, or it's got mercury, it's got whatever it happens to be in it. Just to break down. That way we can use that somewhere down the line. If we catch somebody else, we can tie them back to the steel. We can use this as evidence, basically to show that it was real whiskey. All right, this is another one too, and the reason we're showing this one here was, if you'll know the snow right there behind that, these big barrels had come from South Georgia. The barrels was the guy down in South Georgia decided to grow trout, and he was going to do this right in here. He forgot that trout has to have real cold water. All right, South Georgia don't have no cold water. So anyway, this guy went into business, went out of business pretty quick. So he sold these to a fellow who happened to know it. The guy here, people are familiar where the airport's at, right? Okay, that right here was in that area way before the airport was built in there. And when we got these people here, the steel discovered is the people who owned the property went in there to cut firewood and happened to see it, because this guy didn't put it far enough back in the woods. These are empty now because we dumped them. All right, so, but the steel's gone. If you'll notice, there's all you got there is your big barrels of mash, no steel. This is Mike Stapleton. Mike was the agent, revenue agent for years, and he left the revenue department and went over to Northeast Georgia as the chief of police there. Again, notice the snow. When we got when the information came to us about this place over here, we went and checked it. Sure enough, the steel was gone. The owner of the steel operator had seen tracks coming in there in the snow also. So he come that morning, the next morning, and removed all the distillery parts. All right, so anyway, go to the next map. What we did is, when he left, he took the thing, loaded his truck, and took it to his house. We followed him. You ever do rabbit hunting in the snow? You know how you take the tracks and you do the rabbit? That's what we did with him. So anyway, we followed him. He only lived about 1.5 miles from where the steel site was at, and we didn't lose. The one thing about police ain't really as dumb as what a lot of people give us credit for. The thing about it is we go through a lot of schools and different things like that. We learn man tracking, we learn how to identify this or that. So basically, the tire tracks. We wouldn't follow the tracks. We the tread pattern on that is what we actually followed, because he came to an intersection. So anyway, go on to the next one. All right, that's what we found at his house. That is a pan, and notice how he camouflages it? It don't help that much in snow, but anyway. So he brought it to his house. We followed him right in there. We cased him on the thing, and we could have seized his truck, but we would have been real nice. And the reason we could, that's some other parts and stuff that he had at the steel side. The reason we didn't take his truck or anything like that is we had to give him a way to come to jail. See, a lot of times we arrest somebody, we didn't take them to jail right there. A lot, they have to have a bath and feed the dogs and all that. So we say, and these are local folks too. It ain't like, you go out to go run them down. So you just tell them, okay, meet us over there, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and we'll process it, you can make bond and go on. A lot of this, now you have to be good to people, especially if they're family. I don't know if y'all have family reunions, but it's the worst thing in the world to go to a family reunion and you've arrested half the people that's there. Some of them bring food. And, I don't want none of his food because I've arrested him, he made poison or something like that. So anyway, it's good to be good to people. Especially on something, it's not all that serious if you're thinking about it. This was another huge one. This is another, the one that was at the airport, and this one was the same guy. He has been into liquor making ever since he was a toddler. All right, so if you notice, I'm going to tell you 2 or 3 things. You'll hear me say this about a liquor still. These people are clean when they're making whiskey. And if you'll notice how clean the mash is, that's what that is right here. And he's using that pump, and that pump ended up at the fire department. When we seize a lot of the stuff at these distilleries and things, we will make it available, especially to the local, our own government stuff. Go to the next one right here. All right, there's the cap again. This, and I'll tell you right now exactly what happened to it. We blow a still up. That cap is so well made that thing was blown about 100 yards away from the liquor still, and we didn't find it. All right, but the guy who had the still did. And so he took it to the next still that he made. All right, and then again, I'm going to show you the cleanliness. You see the black, the black stuff right there. This is where he filters the liquor that's coming out of it. Now, if you've ever seen Popcorn Sutton or some of these other people that's on YouTube and things like that, they use their hat, a felt hat. That's a bunch of crap. They don't do it because you ever seen them wear something that has an old nasty whiskey smell on it? But that was a tradition type thing that, how do you do it? I didn't bring no cotton with me, so I used my hat. So, but you do get a lot of impurities out of it because you don't want to get. Sometimes you would find a bottle like that and it'd have gnats in it. All right, and now the gnats usually got into it because you didn't put the lid on quick enough. When it comes through the distillery, it's going to be, it's going to be clear. But if you leave a cap off of it, you're going to have gnats or anything like that to get into it. But your impurities you'll find in it too. And they used to have a thing that they called rope. All right, if your liquor is ropey, then that means that you got these little twirly things hanging in it. What's caused that is impurities. That's what the purpose again for that puke barrel was, is for it so that it don't go into your, that the steam's not carrying it on through the process. So there's a lot of phrases and things that you might hear if somebody was to tell you, say the liquor is ropey, then you'll know that the mash had got into the steam process of it. That is a condenser here. That's called a shotgun condenser because that was a square, but that was got 144 copper tubes running through it, and this is the pipe coming off this from that steel running into here. This is your cold water lines coming into it. When steam comes in, it hits it, it condenses back to a liquid, and it's going to run out. That thing will have a flow of whiskey about that big around coming out of that thing. That's what I'm telling you. These things here is what they do as money makers. Especially if you're using hog shorts and you're using a lot of sugar, then you're going to end up having a cheaper product than you would if you like if you go to a distillery or something like that and do it. There's a lot of money went into this steel. That stuff right there is all aluminum. It's not really aluminum, but it's aluminum alloy. But because you couldn't do it in copper, you couldn't afford it. All right, there's one of our local heroes, Marty Talley, and Marty's been real good on liquor and everything else. He's our investigator with the Sheriff's Department now, Chief Investigator. He's actually, same cap and everything else, it's just that when you're looking at it on the other side where it was camouflaged. All right, all this stuff right here is, we used to have reports constantly. People who had houses on the lakes and people at Sky Valley and other places would complain about somebody stealing my gas tanks. Well, the whiskey makers is not going to go out and buy them or anything like that because the law will get them. It's easier to just go to somebody's house and get one and take it up there. Notice camouflage. The guy that has these stills right here, he is a camouflage expert. But he gets caught all the time, but he still knows how to camouflage stuff. He camouflages everything. See his nets? The old military looking nets and stuff that they put over the thing? That's what happened to that steel you were just looking at. We'll make in, if you hear me say something about dynamite, we don't use dynamite. But a lot of people are not familiar with K-Pack. A K-Pack is two chemicals that you mix together. It's safe until you mix them together, then they'll go kapooey. So that's what happened to that particular one. And it was full of mash. You'll see what's left running out of the bottom right down through there too. That's not good for the environment, but it's good for the hogs. This is another one right here. This particular steel right here was located off on Highway 28, and the people who was manufacturing whiskey right there were pretty good outlaws, because they were doing marijuana and cocaine over there, selling it, and going out there and fishing, seining the creeks and everything, fishing, selling fish, killing nighttime deer, and selling all. They were into money making stuff. So anyway, you can't. I don't know if you can see it or not, but you see the jar up there on the top, the mason jar. That was actually the whiskey. And you see the coloration and everything with that. What happened whenever they?
Oh, maybe. Right here, that right there.
If you don't clean a still real good, you're going to have all kinds of stuff in there, and it's going to pick it up whenever the steam runs through the thing. And I've got one picture right here that'll show you.
Not that one.
There. What they used to clean the steel with is baking soda. Baking soda it'll neutralize acids and things like that too. But you see the blue on the cap. Sometimes if you don't clean your steel good, you're going to have blue liquor. You won't have white liquor. But it's going to pick all that up. That's a corrosion from copper itself, kind of like rust. But that particular one right here, that the jug is, and that bottle on top up there, that's a proof bottle. This guy knew what he was doing on how to test it. That's what this is. You test the proof by the bubbles that's in it and what's the countdown on it, the size. Yeah, we got that particular one there. We got 20 something pounds of marijuana there too. This is for making brandy. You got apples, you got peaches, and some of them you'll see is grapes. The ones out up here, they call either, call it wheat liquor, or you call it hog short, or mainly, or sugar liquor. Now, sugar liquor is basically where you use mostly sugar and just a little bit of grain. And the grain is to just give it a little bit of flavor or anything, but anyway, the sugar is where all the alcohol comes from anyway. Those are buried down into the ground. You can see whenever, and the reason they bury them down in the ground is to keep them warm, to keep them from freezing. And they'll cover the whole thing back up because they don't have any kind of heat stuff back out in the woods. So there's some of the ingredients. Now, there's a phrase that the newspaper came and did one time, and then one of the TV channels, I don't remember if it's Atlanta or Greenville or what, but I made a comment on the different things because they asked me what those things right here are for. I said, that's for making tricky liquor. Now, the deal is with tricky liquor is, that's flavoring. One drop of that right there could go into a 5-gallon bucket and you think you've got brandy. This is plain old sugar liquor here. And this particular one right here, of course, it's charred. But what they will do for brandy, a gallon of this right here will cost you $22. A gallon of one drop of that stuff right there in it, $32. So what they will do is, a lot of people will come in there and they will say, okay, have you got any brandy? Oh yeah, I've got some. He'll run in there, take up that, and then put a couple of drops of this in it. This right here is $200 per bottle. It comes from New York. One of those is apple, one is peach, and one is grape. And there's like I'm saying, there's about a $10 difference in that and than what they see with brandy. It's not brandy, but you couldn't tell it from brandy. It smells like brandy and it tastes like brandy. It's just tricky liquor is what it is. Those are showing your wheat brand up there at the top. That's one ingredient. A lot of times they will put something else into it. It'll be like corn whiskey, but they may put barley or rye in a. Everybody here knows what a toe sack is, right? Mm-hmm. All right. You take that and put it into it, and you hang it inside the steel. And then whenever you'll get that. It's kind of like scotch. Sort of like how my folks, the Scotch, used to make scotch using our barrels here. You know that the scotch is generally, although the barrels mostly comes from Jack Daniels and stuff like that. So anyway, there's all kinds of secret things that you can go into it. It's a money-making deal at times. And, of course, sometimes it's not. Depends on if you get caught or not. Oh, go back to this thing right here. You had to pay taxes. This right here is your judge. He had to buy those. He had to buy this. He had to buy that. He had to buy that. He paid taxes on every bit of that. So, anyway, technically, he paid taxes on his whiskey. All right, again, radiators. Lead. Now, I told a fellow one time, when he was jumping on to me again about, coming out there, a hard-working man making whiskey and stuff while I'm bottling. I said, well, do this right here. Think of me, basically, I'm working for you, okay? Not only the fact I'm working in law enforcement, but I'm your quality control man. If everybody in Rabun County made whiskey, you couldn't make no money. I'm catching a few right here and getting them out so that you just cut down on your. Yeah, it's business, all business. So anyway, he didn't think I was too funny, but anyway, the problem here too is with the federal government. I'm gonna tell you, some people might remember this. If you go down you got the new road over here, and you got the old road, the one that comes down through, runs through Tiger. All right, the old road, when you come down through here, there's a pond. Just right before you get to Tiger, there's a rock house over here. Right there where that pond used to be a sign. A great big billboard, and they had a state trooper, Georgia state trooper there, and he's holding, now this is back in the 1960s, 63, 60, something like that. And he's sitting there like this holding that, and he said, that's a killer. All right. We did have a fellow one time here in Georgia, and I can't remember what his name is, but he killed a whole lot of people. He had an order for a lot of whiskey, but he didn't have it, so what he did is he took regular old alcohol and mixed in with it, and he killed about 40-something people with it. And and some of them, a lot of blind people. Well, we don't even really know how many people, because a lot of people died, the family buried them, they thought, well, he's dead. We don't know what killed him or anything, but it was, natural causes according to what they thought. But that, I don't know if you know anything about mechanics, but that radiator right there is plumb full of lead. Because all them little bitty pieces right there are soldered. When that steam comes through there, it's gonna pick up that lead and it's gonna carry it right into that jug. All right, and this, again, you look at, what is it, garden hose, and of course this old nasty box and everything else. But on this particular steel here, he wasn't using any kind of copper for connectors or anything. He was using gutter pipe. Well, most of your gutter, again, I guess it's aluminum or something, so it ain't gonna, kill you or nothing, maybe. But it's just the idea of it. All right, again, this is one, there's a steel to the left, and then there's another one that this part here is connected to. That particular red bottle is one of these. That was for testing your proof of your whiskey that comes through. The pipe running out right there into where the cotton is, the bottle's located, that's a gutter pipe. All right, this is that particular steel, and you can see they were making their mash inside the box. That's a plywood box right here on the bottom. And what they would do is they would take plywood, and your top and your two sides are made out of plywood. The bottom has got a metal sheet on it, and it's set up off the ground on some cement blocks, and your fire goes underneath it. And have you ever seen put a styrofoam cup with water in it on the fire? It won't melt. That water won't let the styrofoam melt. So, like a campfire, don't do it in the house. But anyway, it's sort of like what you have right here. Again, eventually you'll burn this thing out because of the heat and stuff that may come up if it gets dry. But as long as you got some liquid in there, that's going to keep most of your heat and stuff off your plywood. That's a cheap way to do the thing, and again, they want to try to make as cheap as they can to make more money. The one at the top is steel. This one right here, it's got a plywood. That's got a plywood top on it. That there's the product that was made from that particular steel. The steel was right next to the guy's house. Again, that was one that was found when we're looking for marijuana. You use a helicopter fly. A lot of times they'll fly over people's houses and stuff like that. And if they see something, they'll give us a call. There's again which type. This one here, we had to, I don't know, that might be somebody's folks right there, so we had to do away with the face off. This was a good citizen. He was, some people call him rats, we call him good citizens. Anyway, he, because he was an informant. But there was 2 trucks sitting at this house, both of them was loaded down with whiskey. There's 400 and something gallons on this one, and it don't look like it, but you got a piece of liquors here, plywood, and liquors out there, and they put plywood on top of that. But anyway, there's over 400 gallons in this one. The other one had the same way. We ended up with somewhere around 800 and something gallons of whiskey. And I got a story to go with this particular one here too. It was reported to us by a real estate person who, that house was for sale. But he just parked them there because he parked them there that night. The next morning, him and another driver was going to take them to Athens. Well, the problem was the other guy got sick and couldn't go, so the real estate people came in and happened to find it, and they told him, and he actually told us, and he took us over to show us. All right, this is what we confiscated. At one time, there was 6 vehicles parked at the courthouse, and they were seized either with whiskey in them or at the steel side. Now I'll tell you a little funny story right here about the liquor. There ain't nothing wrong with making a little bit of liquor, especially if your police is involved in it, which at one time he was. And he got caught in uniform because he just had got off work and he went to the steel house. And he got caught right there. Of course, they fired him, but he wasn't really what you say charged with anything. So they figured, getting fired is enough because there wasn't a lot of jobs out there then. But I had to throw that thing in basically here is even your police knows how to make whiskey because their families made whiskey. All right. This is showing the law enforcement school that we did. Picture at the top left up there, we had people that came all over the country to our classes that we put on. This guy here that you see with the one that says it tastes like chicken, if you can read that bottom thing, he's from Oklahoma. He's a revenue agent out of Oklahoma. All right, some of the people that we had Oklahoma, we had people from Minnesota. The furthest, I think, we had somebody from Washington State that came out. We had them from Florida. Didn't have anybody from North Carolina. Now, different states have different laws. North Carolina, you get caught. If Georgia get caught, it's a felony. North Carolina, the first time, it's a misdemeanor. Second time, it's a felony. So they don't put as much, maybe as serious issue as far as we did here. You see the oatmeal thing down here on the bottom on it. That's what we use to seal off the cap and some of the headache pieces and stuff. This is the still we built to actually use in the school. We made whiskey on that one. No, I'll take that back. We didn't make no whiskey. We made ethanol. Now, think about it. It was illegal even for us to make whiskey. But it was legal for us to make ethanol if you had a license. And we'll show you something here at the end of it. Rabun County Sheriff's Department is the only sheriff's department in the whole United States that has a license to make ethanol. We had to get it, okay, before we could actually, to be legal without doing it. There you go. All right, so, and it's the same thing. You can take that right there and put it in your car, and you can drive your car with that. I don't know if you could drink what you might consider ethanol if you get it up to about 180, maybe 180, 85 proof. That is a distillery at Robert Mitchum's place there at
Hillside.
Hillside. I'll get it in a minute. Sometimes I get tongue tied. Robert wanted to get into that right there because he had so much waste. His peaches, his apples, and all that, making applesauce, making everything else. Well, he was having to dump that. So one day I was there talking to him, and I said, well, why don't you turn all that into ethanol? All right, so, and see, ethanol's got a bad name. I don't know if y'all know anything about that. It's supposed to be kind of green stuff or whatever. So, and people don't really want to use it. Y'all, let me ask you another question while I got it in my mind. You remember when you bought gas and it had lead in it? You know what the lead was for? Why they put lead in gas? When your cylinders goes, when your cylinder is operating, that lead builds up in it because them things will wear out and you lose performance. So they put lead in it. Then when I remember going to a filling station and getting gas, they had two. You had leaded and unleaded gas. Well, it depends on what age your car was too, or what you wanted to use. But anyway, that's a distillery for making ethanol. Robert tried to get into the thing. It didn't. The thing's kind of played out. It was big. Ethanol was big in Tennessee, and it was big in a lot of different places where there's a lot of corn and stuff growing. It may come back one day that we have to make it to be able to operate once we get rid of all of that, use up all the gas. But anyway, we threw that right there in just to show that we were legal when we were making this school business.
Okay, that's it for that. We got a video.
We got to show on this thing right here. Again, there's a product. The biggest issue is stuff right here. This is food, right here. And you know what you can make ethanol out of? It ain't food, but it is food to some people. Kudzu. Kudzu is the roots of the kudzu has more carbohydrates and it's richer than what corn is. All right, so, and I made some, and if you'll look at this thing right here, you can still see the residue I made green liquor, okay? Because that's the way it comes out on the kudzu. This residue right here that's turned hard as a brick, that's what's left over from 10 years ago of what I made out of kudzu. Now it tastes bad, but still you can drink it. A lot of people is in favor, if I can use something that is a waste that is causing problems and make something as good, which would be that, and that was Robert's theory on everything. Take all my waste that I've got out here and make something else I can sell out of it. Same way with kudzu. Kudzu is good. Cows love it. So does groundhogs. But anyway, it comes down to this thing with the ethanol. Again, you stay away from the corn because corn is a food for people. And they have to, kudzu, very few people eat kudzu. This was the still that we built basically to, and I'm going to try to cut this short. because really I'm long-winded, and if you let me talk, you're gonna sit there with a sore hind end. So let's do this. Let me we're gonna run through this real quick. This was the steel, which is typical as this particular steel right there, or that little display that I've got. All right, so Matt, if you would just go through that as quick as you possibly can.
You want us to go through the whole video?
Yeah, I'll hit on something.
While he's doing that, did you ever run into
The what?
did you ever run into the, oil to make the
Beads?
beading oil?
Beading oil. Yeah. That's part of tricky liquor too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's
Let me kind of see if I can point it.
bear paw right here. It's hard to see on this screen.
It's hard to see too, because that right there is mash. Well, that thing had turned the barrel over and it ran off down in there. It almost put us out of business. I don't know if you know that fellow right there on the right, but that's Tony Galloway. He's your U.S. Marshal here in Canada. Now, we didn't steal that propane bottle either. It was seized at one of the liquor stores.
They used to sell stuff back to the liquor makers too.
Do what?
The sheriff, when they stir up the steel, and there was stuff left that was useful, they could go buy it back from the sheriff.
Yeah, they could send it back to them. But we did the same thing. A lot of the liquor makers still came back and would buy their cars and trucks back with it.
Hoses and stuff like that, water pipes and stuff, they can sell back to them.
Yeah, now, what we always did, if we caught one, we got a lot of sugar, the sugar went to the hospital, county hospital. Anything that could be reused or anything like that, that was, of course, the jars and stuff like that, we could sell a lot of that stuff, but we didn't really sell it. We could destroy it. Now, what he's doing right there is putting malt into his mash. Malt is yeast feed. It makes your yeast work quicker, and it's actually made from the corn. It's already started to ferment, crack, and everybody made on in this part of the country. Everybody made their own mash.
And stunk,
Well, I mean,
the malt
Malt.
stunk.
yeah,
It
smells
stunk.
like a hog pen. You see that bubbling right there? The yeast is working inside that, and what's coming out of that is gases, and a lot of that might be methane too. So, that was a product. Everything has a waste, even the yeast, not just water. That's the beer, the mash. It's already fermented. He was breaking a cap up on that. But I don't know if you could actually see that to see what that was high, extremely high in alcohol. And of course, you'll take that and then you'll distill that to be able to get your whiskey. don't, if it's full of bugs and gnats and bees, don't hurt nothing, because when it comes back through, it's gonna purify.
You can read
We were
that.
serious about this. Matthew, read that to them.
Mr. Bear, please, I'll read right here. Mr. Bear, please stay out of our beer, Rabun County Sheriff's Department.
Did he listen?
What?
Did he listen?
Yeah,
Yep.
you listen. That's called a slot box, too. Could you speed that up a little bit? Or you have, know how to do that?
Speed up the video?
Yeah.
Yes. How to where?
Huh? No, we're trying to get, oh, those apples and stuff, that bear turned over that barrel too. We're getting ready to make some brandy. That's the malt that it uses to put in to encourage the yeast to work faster and longer. Now, one thing about this, we cranked up the still, we made some whiskey to make sure everything was operating. When we did our school, we had all our students, these revenue agents, all over the place, law enforcement, come down and witness to actually, if you're a good lawman, you're gonna have to know a lot about what you're doing. So, again, what we tried to do with this thing right here is to give them the overall, all the information we possibly could about whiskey making. So, I'll quit talking now.
Did Tony say where he got his experience?
What?
Did Tony say where he got his experience?
I have a book, he read about it out
Out of a book.
National Geographic.
National Geographic. Yep.
All right, there's the back.
Oh.
He's not happy.
He was drunk.
Yeah, he was drunk as a skunk.
Well, allegedly drunk.
Allegedly.
You have to modify
You
that.
what?
You have to modify that. You can't make a statement like that.
No,
Oh,
he
no.
said allegedly.
Yeah. I had to say it allegedly.
No, you can't say he was skunk. You can say he appeared to be.
Oh, he did appear to be. That and you can smell it on him. All right, we've got a whole bunch more of the thing to go on it, but it's, we've been here for a pretty good while, and I know y'all are getting tired. So, let me do a little bit of a question and answer deal.
When the industries moved in, like the plants and
First
stuff,
thing that moved in here was
the
what?
liquor making mostly quit.
No, it didn't.
A
No,
lot
it
of
didn't.
it.
Uh-uh.
A lot of it.
Well, what happened when we got a little bit of industry, first thing you did, you put your wife to work because it's a shirt factory. Regular mills come in up there, and then you have a lot of, where your men and women have jobs.
That's true.
All right, so, but the whiskey, what they did, they just changed a little bit. Most of the people that's out here that was farmers, also carpenters, bricklayers, electricians, and anything like that. But anyway, this is an extra money maker. I'm gonna go back a little bit in the time. When you went back to this time, say in the let's say 1880s or something like that, or 1890s. During that time period right there wasn't a whole lot of industry in here, but we were starting to have a lot of people come in to the county because of the railroads and because of the lake, and because of the black rock and because of the mountain there. So they were tourists. All right, we called them, we didn't call them tourists, we called them terrorists. But anyway, they did bring in money though, that was good. So the whole idea of this thing right here with the industry of something that people knew, these were Scots-Irish type people, some German, that came in here. Now I'm going to tell you one thing that I was told by one of the local people here that's whole family's been here for thousands of years. If you came into Rabun County from the north, from North Carolina coming in, or from South Carolina, you was honest people. If you came in from the south, you was crooked, dishonest. Well, if you get to looking at, there's a little bit of that. If you look at the crime stuff that did take place, most of the people that came down from North Carolina, or came down through North Carolina, came from Virginia, and the other ones that came in, a lot of them came in were Irish people that came in through Savannah, and they had been run out because of the potato famine and everything else there in Ireland. So a lot of these people, you know, of course, Irish, they like to drink. In fact, that's where a lot of that Irish whiskey stuff comes from. And if you ain't working, what are you going to be doing? I'm going to be down at the pub drinking whatever I can. So, but what the big thing was Rabun County it was a necessity. You had to have other things to do with this corn. If you couldn't sell the corn, and you can't eat just so much of it, but your hogs or anything like that, and your cattle was able to, you know, take it in. So if you could turn it into another product, then you would do that and utilize it. I don't know if you know what a wagon load of corn is, but if you had a wagon load, and that takes up a lot of space and things. The whiskey stuff didn't. You could turn it into the volume things, and of course you could say, why do they call it spirit? Why do they call it spirits? I never could figure that out. You know, anybody here know? Anybody here make wine? Okay, you know where you put stuff in a barrel, like a keg? Whiskey, or whatever you're putting in there that's got the alcohol, you're going to lose a portion of it. Where's it go? That's the spirits that goes to the angels.
The angels.
Right?
The angels.
Right. Okay. So that may be why they call it that. It's able to escape and come back out. The thing in Rabun County is the old saying was a lot of people would starve to death if they wasn't making liquor. That's true, because there wasn't any industry here. What little bit of industry we may have, you didn't make enough money to survive on, and so with this right here. Where did a lot of this liquor go here? It went out of the county. It went to Atlanta. It went to Greenville, South Carolina. Somebody went north. Well, it went all the way up to Michigan. Some of my relatives used to haul whiskey up to Detroit. This was back in the 50s and the 60s. And a funny story right here, right quick. They were going up the road here. They had the truck loaded down with whiskey. And what they did, they cut a bunch of pine trees and laid pine trees on top of it. They got stopped in Kentucky by a state trooper. He asked them, what are you doing? Oh, we're taking these Christmas trees to Michigan. Well, it's July. So, but him being from where he was from, he turned them loose and let them go. I think he knew what he had on the truck.